Edhellond was an ancient harbour in southern Gondor. It had been established southwest of where the Ringlo, meaning Cold Fenland River, entered the Morton, or Black Root River, near when the combined waters flowed through Cobhashaven Inlet into the Bay of Belfast. Edhellond was founded in the late First Age by seafaring Sindar from the West Havens of Beleriand, Britombar and Eglarest, called the Grey Havens of the Falas, when these were destroyed in the years after Nirnaeth Arnoedia, the Battle of Outnumbered Tears, where the power of Morgoth overwhelmed the allied armies of Eldar, dwarfs, and Edain, when the forces of eastern tribes of men changed sides, betraying their elven teachers and joining the army of the first Dark Lord instead. In the aftermath of the battle, was the power of elves in Beleriand definitively broken. Most of the inhabitants of Britombar and Anglarest, led by Círdan and Gil-galad, made a refuge on the Isle of Balar, but 3 ships, manned purely by Sindar elves, fled further south. They sailed further south, continued down the coast, until they reached the Bay of Belfalas. There, in Cobhashaven, they finally landed. They established a small sanctuary, their new home, and called it Edhellond. The name Edhellond means Elf Haven in Sindarin, from Edhel, elf, and Lond, a harbour or haven. This village became significant for the first time when, at the beginning of the Second Age, a group of elves of Lindon travelled into Belfalas, giving the region its name, Belfalas meaning a great shore in Sindarin. These elves were a remnant of the people of Doriath, who still harboured a grudge against the Noldor, and therefore did not want to stay in Lindon, where the power of Noldor under Gil-galad was concentrated. They learned the craft of shipbuilding at the Grey Havens, and then settled at the mouth of the Morton River, in Edhellond. Now the original inhabitants of the region, primitive fishermen scattered around the coast, who tolerated the small original village, populated only by the refugees who had come in just 3 small ships, fled in fear of the newcomers to the valleys in White Mountains. Descendants of these fishermen would one day follow Aragorn over the Ringlo as his army of the dead. But that is another story. Still, the coastal settlement remained relatively small, but it grew in size when ever-growing numbers of Sylvan and Nandor elves, coming down the river Anduin while seeking for the sea, settled in Edhellond and increased its population. During early centuries of the Second Age, when the population of Sylvan elves exceeded the one of Sindar elves and the importance of the town grew significantly, this outpost of elves have given name to the whole region. All the lands including and surrounding Edhellond came to be considered the country of Amroth. 1,000 years later, around the time of the fall of Eregion, when Sauron destroyed the realm of Hollin and sacked its capital Ostin-Edhil, elves began sailing from Edhellond westward to Valinor. This was due to the large number of refugees from the north, and also because Grey Havens in Lindon were under siege and therefore out of reach for the elves of other realms who decided to leave for the Blessed Realm. Needless to say, a lot of these refugees settled in Edhellond and its neighbouring country, at least for a time being, thus causing another population boom of the harbour town. Later in the Second Age, a Númenórean family of the Faithful, who survived the destruction of their island home, settled near the Elves of Edhellond. Elendil the Tall, leader of the Númenóreans in exile, gave them the title to rule the fief of Belfalas. They built their stronghold upon the promontory running into the Bay of Belfalas, just over 25 miles southwest of Edhellond. Strong friendship was established between these 2 towns, and the Dúnedain learned a lot from the neighbouring elves, while providing them with some knowledge of Númenórean seafaring as well. The coming of the Dúnedain and their knowledge of the vast world strongly influenced the most famous of the elves of Edhellond, who was Arinmir, an elven maiden of Sylvan origin. Since her childhood, she loved to listen to sailors and other travelers' tales. Therefore, although very young by Elven standards, she left the woods and plains of Belfalas to explore the world. She traveled alone, visiting many Elven tribes, even those living in the far east and south. She became known in Umbar and Harat, and was able to find friends also in Khand, ruled at that time by Uvata the Ring-Wraith. Her travels made Edhellond famous in the Elven community of the East, with many Nandor and Avari elves choosing to go there to follow the call of the sea. The third important wave of refugees hit Edhellond at the Third Age, when Durin's Bane was freed in Moria. This occurrence of an ancient evil compelled many of the Galadhrim from the region to flee south and sail over the sea to Valinor. Because their usual way over the Misty Mountains through Khazad-dûm was now blocked, they headed south to Belfalas. One of them was Amrot, the king of Lorien, who ruled his people since the Battle of Dagorlad, where his father fell, killed by orcs. He left his realm behind in search of his beloved Nimrodel, who had fled early from the horror unleashed by dwarfs in Moria, which was later identified as being a Balrog of Morgoth. Amrod reached Edhellond safely, and while ruling the local elves for some time, he also prepared for the final voyage into the west, which he and Nimrodel agreed to make together. But Nimrodel, who loved Middle-earth as much as she did Amrod, failed to join him. Amrod had waited as long as he could, until finally he boarded the last ship, which was to sail from Edhellond, bearing the last inhabitants of this settlement. Amrod persuaded the others to wait for some time more, still hoping his Nimrodel would come. But one night the ship was blown prematurely out to sea by strong winds. As soon as Amrod discovered that they are sailing without his love, he jumped overboard and attempted to swim to shore. His attempt to reach the land and search for Nimrodel was futile though, and Amrod drowned in the bay. With Amrod being lost, the last elves left the region. The Númenórean lord, named Galador, ruling at that time the Belfalas fiefdom, decided to change the name of his capital fortress town to remember the elves and honor their last leader. It was from the name of King Amrod of Lorien and Edhellond that Dol Amrod, meaning the hill of Amrod, took its name. Thus Galador, the son of Imrazur, became the first prince of Dol Amrod. According to legend, this name change was done mainly to honor Galador's mother, the elven lady Mitrelas, whom Imrazur had married, and who was originally a companion of Nimrodel on her journey south. The actual haven and the settlement of Edhellond was deserted from then on, although it was remembered in the traditions of the Gondorians in Anfalas and in Dol Amrod. If you liked the video, please give it a thumb up and consider subscribing if you are not already, as each takes just a second to do and will be very much appreciated. See you next time.